And peace be with you.
God with you.
It's so good to have you here on this, the fifth Sunday after Pentecost. I have people from Plymouth also join us on this beautiful day. And do you just love the parable of the Good Samaritan? Isn't that a great, who loves that? Who loves that? A couple of people too. Great, great. It's a great feel-good story. After a person traveling down the road to Jericho is attacked and robbed and left for dead, the self-righteous know-it-alls, they don't help. The politicians, the rich business owners, the pastors and the bishops all pass by, but the humble Good Samaritan comes to the rescue. That's a great story, isn't it? Great feel-good story. What I feel that we often miss is that Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan not as a feel-good story, but as God's counter story, a counter story that goes against the way our stories usually go. The Samaritans were the arch rivals of the Jewish people at the time, but actually, they both thought they were worshiping God the right way, whether at Mount Gerizim and in Samaria or Mount Zion in Jerusalem. It's like we're the ones that are doing it right. And they were very similar, remnants of the northern and southern kingdoms of ancient Israel when that split happened. But they keep calling the other side the enemies, the pretenders. They're not like us. They're just not like us at all. So Jesus is using the example of an enemy. Yeah, great. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you. Okay. Of an enemy to come to our rescue, our arch rival to come to our rescue. Who is our enemy? Well, I always start, because I grew up here, I say, who's the enemy of Red Sox fans?
Yankees.
Yankees, yes. And more particularly, Yankees fans, right? So that's how I started my childhood about enemies. Red Sox Nation versus Yankee Nation. And so years ago, I was a Lutheran pastor at one time, and we were having a conference in the western part of Massachusetts, and I joined a group of pastors that played hooky. So instead of saying in our set-aside retreat and meditating and listening to the bishop's address that he just drawn on for hours and hours and hours, we slipped out the back door, a group of us, and we knew that the Red Sox were playing the Yankees down at Yankee Stadium, and we're so close in New York, why not just go down and watch the game? No one's going to miss us, just a bunch of pastors in the back seat. So we skipped the talk by the bishop, snuck out the back door, got in a car and headed to New York City, got tickets, and it was the first and last time I ever set foot in Yankee Stadium. And during the game, whenever we cheered on the Red Sox, the fans behind us poured beer on us. Yeah, it sounds funny, doesn't it? You get beer all over you, and sometimes food, hot dogs, and you have to understand what we look like, though. So I thought we had some kind of immunity shield around us, because we snuck out of the bishop's address. A lot of us are still wearing like black shirts, white tabs, look like priests. And then one of the pastors with us, Richard, he was a victim of polio as a child. And so he wore metal braces around his legs. He had special canes that came up here to grab your whole arm so you can get that grip. And he had this very awkward gait. And so the people, we were being harassed, looking like pastors, because we were, with someone, an obvious victim of polio, and beer dumping on us, and food falling on us. Yankees fans, Red Sox fans, enemies. Now, if Jesus had told the parable of the Good Samaritan to our little group of pastors at that game, Jesus would have had a Yankees fan come to our rescue. So, of course, a couple of Yankees fans came to our rescue. And they interceded, and that's kind of shielding us as we left the stadium and telling people to stop harassing us. And if Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan today to us, who would play the starring roles? Billionaire Jeff Bezos coming personally with his own time and money to rescue the homeless on Boston Common? A pro-Palestinian protester rescuing members of an ultra-Orthodox Jewish community in New York City? It's very hard. It's very hard to see our sworn enemy coming to help us in our time of need. And that's why we are so drawn to amazing rescue stories not by the bad guys, but by the good guys. We want the good guys to rescue us. On July 4th, you all know the story, Guadalupe River in Carville, Texas, surged more than 22 feet in just a few hours. Hundreds died in the dark in the raging floods that morning, including, I think, more than 20 girls at the Christian camp, Mystic Camp. Our hearts break with sorrow for them and for their families as we ask God to hold them all in tender mercy at this very difficult time. And we yearn for good news. I find myself yearning for good news in this tragedy. And there are incredible examples, ordinary people running, rescuing people, pulling them to safety. U.S. Coast Guard rescue, this is a story that was promoted a lot. U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin, who's flown up from Corpus Christi in a helicopter in a flight that usually takes an hour with the difficult weather. It took 8 hours, a harrowing flight. This was his first rescue mission of his life. And he got to the camp, Camp Mystic, and he said, "Leave me on the ground." And they took off without him. He organized landing zones. And they say he saved over 165 people that day. And those are great stories. I need those stories. We need our heroes. So is Scott Ruskin and the others on that day who rescued people good Samaritans? Yes, they really are. It's amazing that God gives us people like that. And I thank God for that. People that put their lives on the line for others. And while there were many individual heroes on that day, the community, it was the system that failed at so many levels. And there's a lot of blame being thrown around. It's this agency, etc. It's the local county officials. They balked at the high cost of installing a flood warning system that was updated. There was a proposal, it would be voted down. There would be some money from the state provided by FEMA, but the state gave it to other places, not to them. They were passed over. I think 3 times over the last 10 years, Carr County asked for money to do this, and they were denied. Layoffs and retirements were not being filled at key federal weather warning positions that could have made a big difference because of the freeze on hiring federal workers that we all know about. And so at all these different levels, it was the system that was failing. We had incredible individual Good Samaritan heroes. The system, the community failed. Yes, Good Samaritans are vital, vital. But I think the question for us today, and almost all days, is why perpetuate and nurture a system that will constantly fail us again and again? A system that keeps producing more victims on the road to Jericho needs to be called into question. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in his sermon, A Time to Break Silence, that he delivered at Riverside Church, this is what King said. He said, on the one hand, we are called to play the role of the Good Samaritan on life's roadside. But this is what he said, that's only an initial act, an initial act. One day, we must come to see that the whole Jericho Road itself must be transformed. The road needs to be transformed so that men and women, children, and all will not be constantly beaten and robbed while they're on the road. True compassion, King said, is seeing that an edifice, a structure which produces beggars, needs to be restructured. We need restructuring. We need a counter story. We need an alternative way to the way we do business as usual. And we can point fingers and blame, but the tendencies I see just sicken me. And so instead of a system that gives tax rates to the upper, 0.05% of our population and imposes a higher burden on the poor to do that? Instead of a system that takes away health care from the poorest among us, we need true compassion on a systematic level. On the whole road, we need that compassion. Yes, we need the incredible churches and individuals that step in and help with the homeless and help the poor and help the hardworking poor. But it's the road. The road needs to be fixed. We need to fix the system. Why build and maintain a system that promotes the beating up on more poor people and the destabilizing of vulnerable families? And that's why in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus is deliberately shocking us. He's deliberately shocking us. It's something that we can't quite see until we realize the enemy. They really are Yankees fans, Jesus is really trying to shock us, provoke us with an example of our enemy coming to our rescue. We are being provoked out of our complacency that we are the individual heroes, or the heroes are just like us. They look just like us. We are being shocked out of writing ourselves as the good guys in the story. Jesus is opening our eyes to the other, to the enemy that we often look down on, and inviting us to see the enemy as really part of our community that needs compassion. So the Good Samaritan is God's counter story, opening up our eyes to see the enemy, and it's a call to action on a community level, not just for individuals. And to close with another baseball story, do you know the story of Jackie Robinson? Jackie Robinson, the first African-American player to break the color boundary in Major League Baseball. He played for the Dodgers, the Brooklyn Dodgers. And what baseball records does he hold? He still has the career record for field percentage by a second baseman at .992. He shares a single season record for the most double plays by a second baseman, 137. He led the National League in stolen bases and in double plays by a second baseman again and again and again. So what happens when this hero, bringing so much joy to people, retires? And he tries to buy a house in Connecticut. His neighbors were hostile. They shunned the real estate broker and tried to drive him out of business that sold the property to Jackie Robinson. There was no welcome for Jackie Robinson in this town in Connecticut. And what he thought would be his dream retirement home after all those years and an amazing career, there was one place that gave Jackie Robinson a welcome. It was the Congregational and later the United Church of Christ in that town. That church welcomed Robinson and his family. They had a place to worship, they had a community, they had a place to make local friends, because the Congregational church, unlike other churches and places, opened their doors and welcomed him and his family there. It's the North Stamford Congregational Church. Look it up. Look it up. And I ask that you may look up stories like this, that you may be inspired by one of our sister congregational churches, the United Church of Christ. May we also have the courage to lead as a church community, to demonstrate how to love the other, often labeled as the enemy in the world stories. To our world stuck in that same old story that produces yet more victims on the road to Jericho. May our community be courageous, be absolutely courageous by practicing God's counter story of true compassion and hope that is so needed today. That is my fervent prayer.